Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Thursday, November 13th, the year of our Lord 2025. This is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining me this morning. Hope you've had a wonderful week so far. As always, I think I have. I've been living good. Gamecocks win last night on the hardwood, 81-61. If you want a good listen, if you like basketball, go back and listen. And the podcast version is up. I encourage you to go follow them on Spotify or Apple. Rate them 5 stars, hit that subscribe button, wouldn't cost you a thing, even if you don't listen. Help us out there to the late night Gamecock show. Mad Dog filled in with Matt, and it was very interesting because the game was going on at the same time. And so they kind of gave some live analysis. I was listening to it this morning. It was really good listen. If you want to dive into the game, Matt's really good at explaining things like Ken Palm and metrics and all that. And basically, he said, with Ken Palm himself says, don't pay attention to it till after 12 games because some of it's based on last season and then it filters out as they get through a body of work this year. So, say what you want about the intelligence of in today's college basketball, college football world where there's a lot of roster transition. Say what you want about putting that in to begin with, but it does filter out. I guess the algorithm is designed to do that way. I don't like keeping up with that stuff. I think it's ridiculous that we got to a point after they did like the RPI, which is basically like who you beat and where and who they beat. And we started including all these style points, efficiency and things. Winning is most important. It's not how you win, it's that you win. That's my opinion. Nobody agrees with me on that in the basketball world. I think football, as they calculate things moving forward, they really need to, kind of have some differentiation as far as maybe margin of victory and things like that. But if we start getting into like total offense yardage and stuff, or some of these, yards per drive. I mean, I just, you're kind of, that's something that's sort of defeating the purpose of college sports, which is development and getting your young guys out there when the game is over, things like that. But that's a discussion for another time. We'll have plenty of time this all season to talk about big picture stuff and all that. But the Gamecocks went 81-61 in basketball last night. Balanced scoring. Mike Sharp-Jams had another good game. Grant Polk, true freshman, that guy can shoot. He's a good looking player. He's kind of a guy they went on late or late-ish in the process, and he's come in and getting some minutes. And I think he hit 4 3-pointers last night with 12 points. Hayden Simeon continues to play very, very well. Not necessarily scoring, but this team needs rebounding. They need defense, and he's a guy that, as a freshman, has come in and done that. He looks good, and a lot of offensive boards and things like that. They need more guys to step up inside, obviously. And I think a bright spot, Jordan Butler. His hair. Jordan had kind of the cornrows going on first couple of games, and he's let it back out. The side Phil Mullinax. Mad Dog calls him the sideshow Bob of Gamecock basketball, and he let the hair flow last night and played aggressive. I mean, he's 7 feet tall, 7'7" 7'1". The whole key for him this offseason was getting bigger, stronger, tougher in the post. I think he's a work in progress very much, but I thought there were some things he did last night to take a step forward. You get him going as a legit post player with his skill and agility and things like that. It's going to help the team. I don't expect, miracles here, but I was thinking the other day, because we've talked, a lot of folks, obviously the post and you start talking about interior, guard defense. Interior defense to me is a football term, but it's, guarding the rim, things like that. And you kind of get concerned. But I'll also point this out. I don't know the basketball's changed that much through the years. I know the SEC is tougher, but a 97 SEC championship team had three really good guards, and Ryan Stack was a pretty good player. And then William Gallman, who I've heard of Simeon compared to a lot of more recent players going back in the day. I think he reminds me right now of Gallman. Can he take his game offensively to another level? Gallman was kind of that forward the rebounder on those good teams Eddie Fogler had back in the day. But right now he looks like a Gallman, and they got by with Gallman, and then Ryan Stack, similar skill set to Jordan Butler. Back then, big man that could shoot the three. So in basketball, if you have good guards and you can shoot, you have a chance, but that's all there is a chance. The defense that they play sometimes is very concerning. Lamont Paris talked about that. But they're working on it. And I thought defensively against Presbyterian last night, they played a lot better, maybe than they did against Southern Miss. It was a lot less lapses, a lot of good on the ball D. They guarded well. Eli Ellis and Michi Johnson did not get in double figures, and they won going away. One thing I hope does not develop as a trend, and maybe that's just how it goes when you're shooting threes. And they were 8 for 25 last night, so not a super duper night shooting. But in all three games this year, North Carolina A&T, they're up 80-52. They ended up winning by 19, so up 28, won by 19. They're up 16 against Southern Miss. That game went to overtime. They won by 4. Last night, and Paris talked about this afterward. He said, well, it's not a big deal. I'm not too much worried about it. The margin of victory thing caps at 10 anyway. They won by 20. But, they were up 32 and won by 20. I think PC went on an 18-6 run at the end. Presbyterian's pretty good, very well coached team. They had some wins so far, went on the road and beat Georgia State, which was an upset. So, Derek Scott said on the morning show earlier this week, they present a lot of challenges, and they do. They play, an offense similar to Virginia under Tony Bennett, from what Paris said. So that's not easy to guard. And the Gamecocks with a really solid win. And the good news is that some guys that were maybe different in the scoring column showed up, another balanced scoring night. And Norton Capich, who I believe is a starter on this team, deep thigh bruise, only played 3 minutes and was out. Kreese DeSandico also missed the whole game out. So there's 2 of your post-rotation guys. It sucks for Sandico. He needs all the minutes he can get, and a chance to get in there and get going and get with the flow. He's a big guy and can shoot, and just kind of a work in progress too. He got here late. But I tell you about this team, the one thing I like is to be a team that has this many new players and some young players at some positions. There's a connectivity there. Like, there's a togetherness that they play with. And I'm not talking about intangibles like culture and play for your teammates and all that. I'm talking on the basketball court. They move the ball pretty well. They share the basketball. That's winning basketball. A lot of teams don't do that these days. Last year's team definitely, especially when it got to crunch time, it was like, I'm going to shoot, me. I'm going to shoot. Poor Colin Murray Boyles would have a game where he was dominating the other team, and then came crunch time, somebody else would throw up a shot. I'm going to be the hero. We haven't seen that type of thing with this year's team just yet. Michi Johnson obviously was the hero, but that's the guy I think you'd want, right? Your older dude that isn't afraid to throw it up from 30 feet and make it. We've seen him do that quite a bit. There's some guys that need to play better. Elijah Strong, Kobe Knox, so far through 3 games, pretty good in the first one, but they're important players on this team. And I'm not going to harp on that too much because it's early, but they noticeably need to play. They haven't played as well as maybe I thought they would, or folks thought they would, or they should be. But then Hayden Simeon's a surprise. Grant Polk is a surprise to a certain extent. And then I think Mike Sharvjams, he's comfortable. He's playing well. He's playing hard. He's kind of a freaky dude at 6'9" and a guard. Mongolian Mike, man. A lot of people were pretty high on him when he came to South Carolina. It's 4th school. That's still somewhat rare these days that you go to four schools, but he's, it was at Dayton and then San Francisco and then Utah last year. Now he's at South Carolina, but Sharjam's probably playing a little better than maybe I anticipated. So there's some ups and downs, with this group. It's not, and I think that's what you want if you're Lamont Paris moving forward. Radford's the next opponent on Tuesday, so you got some time off to get Asandiko and Capich healthy. And then next weekend, it's the heading to West by God, Virginia, a game with Butler next Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock tip off, and then Northwestern on Sunday around I think 5. I don't know if I was looking at the Central time. I think I was looking at Central. I was on ESPN, so 5. So Sunday evening before Rooster Rant, you have a Gamecock game to check out, right? Maybe Rooster Rant. I don't know if Rooster Rant. Maybe Rooster Rant would be in progress. Maybe we get some more live commentary from Matt Anderson. Anyway, the morning show today is packed. Mike Morgan, Justin Hall, Hale McGranahan, Patrick Davis, all in with JB. And then for those that missed Alex Jones, because he wasn't on the late night Gamecock show last night, Phil and I will have him along in the smorgasbord. Texas A&M, major challenge for the Gamecocks this weekend. I think they're about 19.5-point underdogs now. It's the largest point spread of the year. I think around here in the Beamer era, we don't always pay that close of attention to the point spread because he's beaten bigger point spreads before, mostly at home. But, anything can happen. Saturday kicks off at noon. A&M's flying high. And their injury report, or availability report, rather, is pretty interesting. I was talking about Le'Veon Moss yesterday, and I guess it got lost on me. And I apologize for this because I don't like making errors like this, talking about other teams. I just mentioned in passing Moss was still there, and Reuben Owens has been playing well. Reuben Owens has been playing well, their other back, but Moss is out, along with safeties Rashad Johnson, Bryce Anderson. Doubtful is Scooby Williams, who's played some. He's kind of got banged up in the Notre Dame game, and he's been in and out of the lineup. The big one that's very interesting is one of their big guns on offense, wide receiver Mario Craver, probably one of the best deep ball threats in college football this year by a mile. This guy's questionable, and so that's the big one for A&M to watch. I think anytime you pull an upset, sometimes you're hoping for the football gods to smile on you. You never hope for anyone to be injured, but if they're not available, it's like Spurrier used to say about playing Georgia early. Hey, you can count on 2 or 3 of their guys being suspended. Well, your chances of winning increase if they're not at full strength, obviously, because this is such a good football team. And so I think that who knows if he'll actually play or not, but that's a really good football player, as is Scooby Williams, as is Moss. I mean, they're all, significant. They got more though. The Aggies have pretty good talent, so they're not hurting. Don't play a tiny violin for the Texas A&M Aggies roster wise heading into this one. For the Gamecocks, DeChavis Shivers is out, and Casey Henry, of course, out for the year. Along with the other guys like Jalen Brown and the guys that have been out for the whole season. So interesting injury report. We'll see how that develops coming out of College Station this week. But the Gamecocks are going down there. I looking at it, we've talked about the offense all week. I am looking forward to the game, folks, just from the standpoint of I'm curious. Hey, I'm curious like a cat, like remember Harry Carey, Will Ferrell. I'm curious like a cat. Just to see kind of what they put out there. It's been so bad and so clunky and so restrictive and disappointing and all those adjectives you can use to describe an offense this year that, heck, just try something different. I mean, I think we're all desperate to see something different offensively, whether it works or not. I'm a firm believer in that if something's not working, in football. Try something a little different, and most coaches do. I mean, so Mike Furry obviously has a lot of energy. It's night and day different. Mike Shula and Beamer pointed this out in the press conference. It's fair. I'm not coming down on Mike Shula personally or about his personality or anything like that. A lot of your really good offensive coordinators, by the way, are not rah rah guys. In fact, most of them, if you ever watch those guys, the really good ones, they're calm, dissecting. They'll react to a good play, but they're focused on what are they throwing at us on defense and all that. Defensive coordinators are different. They're more energetic and yeah, all that good stuff. So I've just noticed that sometimes you'll have a rah rah offensive coordinator. There's been a few around here from that are up in the booth going bat crap crazy. And those are the teams that have struggled on offense around here most of the time. Shula wasn't like that, obviously. He's on the sidelines. You could see him, very calm guy. So I'm not saying that that's, his personality is the reason. I think the operation of it and the plan and the idea and how he called a game, the work part of it played into it. It's not some kind of psychological issue with him at all, and that's not even part of the equation or discussion. But Furry's a lot different as far as the aggressiveness and the energy and things like that. And for a unit that's struggled, a unit that's lost confidence in the Ole Miss game, they might not tell you they have, but I think they have. For what has to have been another frustrating year for the wide receivers, not getting the ball, maybe it's a welcome development. So I'm curious to watch the offense. Now, let's switch sides of the ball, though, because we're going to talk about the other parts of it. A&M, KC Concepcion, really good at returning punts. Carolina's going to have to be good on special teams. Aggies have missed some field goals this year. They have missed some field goals. So if you can hold them to field goals, maybe they don't make them. So that's a potential bright spot for the Gamecocks. But then that return game, boy, you gotta make sure Mason Love has to have a good day punting. You got to make sure you cover it. That's the one special teams unit I'm looking at. Probably saying don't screw it up. They've been good in punt coverage this year. I mean, Nick Harburg gets down there, and I think, gosh, the last two games, Carolina's had a fumble recovery on a punt return that set up a score both times, Ole Miss and Alabama. So that's a strength, but the Aggies also have a strength with Concepcion back there. I mean, a lot of their games, boom, punt return touchdown. That's why one of the reasons they score pretty big. They have a lot of non-offensive touchdowns, just like the Gamecocks do. So that's going to be something to watch on special teams. Obviously, you got to hit field goals if you're going to pull an upset. You can't drive down there and shank one. So we'll see. Hadn't been a whole lot of field goal attempts, not a whole lot of scoring opportunities this year, but hopefully William Joyce has a good day kicking. And obviously, if you're going to pull an upset, punt return, kickoff returns for touchdowns, those are gold. In games where you want to kind of, get out there and win. Carolina beat the number 3 team in the country in 2019 on the road. And, the pick six right before the half by Izzy McQuamu put them ahead. They only scored 2 touchdowns that day. One was on a bomb. One was on that pick six. Gamecock defense played well. Georgia offense did not. And McQuamu got some more picks, and Gamecocks pulled a shocker. It's the biggest win of the Muschamp era. And then, it was a double overtime, and Georgia missed a field goal at the end. And again, that was a noon kickoff too. So I don't know, but that was that was helpful that day. That Carolina got the non-offensive touchdown. So all the special teams units have to be clicking in Aggie land, no mistakes, and all that good stuff. This is a tremendous challenge because A&M's D has been pretty good at home. Really good first half at Missouri. Missouri was very one-dimensional in that one. They've been okay on the road, giving up some points and yards here and there. Um, Obviously, Arkansas and Notre Dame, those games were in the 40s, but the Aggie offense is just, it's sick. I mentioned the running backs. Carolina on defense, I think, you can't say much bad about this unit. They've gotten very little help from their offense this year at all. And they've kept Carolina in games and played inspired. They may give up some yards here and there, but they are tough in the red zone, holding teams to field goals, good offenses to field goals, holding bad offenses like LSU out of the end zone. With turnovers, Carolina's top 4 or 5 in the SEC in forcing turnovers. This has not been the dramatic downfall or step back on defense that some, not me, but some anticipated in the offseason. It's been, are they as good as last year's D? No. But they're not as bad as maybe some folks. There were some folks out there literally saying it was going to be like 2014. I was like, nah, you can look at the players and tell it can't be that bad. There's something horribly wrong. You would have had to have the situation on defense like you had on offense this year, where just the coaching abandoned everybody, and these guys have all coached and they're good coaches. And even though they've lost their D line coach Travian, and had to kind of piece that together, and you've had some guys in and out of the lineup early in the secondary. This group has played really well, and well enough for Carolina, frankly, to win every game they've played, every single one. Every game, folks. Every game. The highest point total they gave up this year was Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt had a couple of short fields to work with. Other than that, nobody scored over 30 points against Gamecocks. And I hope I'm right about that. Yeah, I don't think who's nobody's LSU scored 20, Oklahoma 26, bunch of field goals in that one, Bama 29. Yeah. Um, Oh, well, sorry. Gosh, how did I forget the last one? Ole Miss was right at 30. So logic dictates that had the offense been scoring points, Carolina would have had a better chance to win a lot of these games. But if there's a bugaboo, it's rushing yards on the road. Ole Miss ran for a bunch, could not stop Kawan Lacey. You're going to have to tackle better with tackle Reuben Owens, tackle Marcel Reed, tackle their other players. If you let Reuben Owens get free, they're gone. He's gone, and they rushed for 243 yards against Missouri last week. Carolina had -9 in that one. Different Missouri team, different situation. Obviously, A&M's really good. They can block up front well. And then Marcel Reed against the Missouri secondary, very efficient, short passes, things like that. Now, if they don't have their guy, Craver, or is it Caver? Let me just double check. Craver, like Crave, like the Crave case from White Castle I used to get in college. And they will hand it on a reverse. I mean, Craver and Concepcion had a combined 5 carries against Missouri. So they're going to run. They're going to give the ball to their receivers and backs and receivers and people like that as well from the line of scrimmage. Reed carries it some. He's really good at avoiding the rush. I will say this: if you heat him up and speed him up at times, he does get a little shaky back there. So if Carolina can get a pass rush off, that's going to be awfully helpful in trying to slow this A&M team at home. But they've got a lot of really good players. Even if Craver is limited or doesn't play, they definitely have other guys that can catch the ball, and probably not as good as Mario, but they got some guys that can get after it and do really, really good things, out there. Mario Craver's an Alabama kid too. He's from Birmingham, Alabama. I wonder if they're kind of sitting there thinking, how did this end up happening? If you're if from Alabama, you let him go to Mississippi State last year, and then he goes to A&M, and he's lighting everybody up all season long. Really good deep threat guy, especially early on in the season. But he's got huge play potential. And you got to make sure Concepcion's they're probably their number one, obviously most uh, productive guy. You know, he came over obviously from NC State, but you know, I guess he's got less catches, but they're both really good. KC Concepcion, Charlotte kid was at NC State, all that good stuff. But you got to cover them, and if you have one less speedster to cover out there, it's pretty good. One thing Missouri did was able to do was run the ball with Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy, but they were just so one dimensional with Matt Zollers at quarterback. It was they only threw for 77 yards, so and A&M won it going away 38-17 out there in Como. But they've been very impressive, very impressive. And Carolina has not been impressive on the road, stopping the run. So, they've been able to stop it at home pretty well against some teams that like to run the ball. But, LSU got more yardage than they normally do down there. You had, Ole Miss obviously ran all over Carolina on the road. Missouri ran all over Carolina at the road, and this is the fourth road game. So road run defense has to step up, and it's going to be a challenge for the secondary again. No matter how, no matter what Craver's status is, they're going to have to get out there and tackle and all that. Tackling has to be a big part of it. I think Dylan Stewart, depending on how they play him on Saturday, he has to have a really good game. The linebackers can't get twisted and confused. I think Justin Okoronkwo's played well. I thought Fred Johnson against Ole Miss played well. I thought the D tackles, Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy's going back to the place he came from, coming off what I thought was his best game against Ole Miss. And so, yeah, we'll see what happens. Clayton Light had a pretty good game plan against them last year for the most part. Things got kind of crazy in the second quarter. A&M actually came back, took the lead, and then Carolina second half adjusted, and we saw what happened there. As far as A&M taking this game lightly, it would be if you talk to their fans, it would be typical A&M, kind of like we say typical Carolina around here. But they remember what happened last season. Talking to some of their guys. David Nuno of Texags Live. I was on with them Tuesday, I believe, and they remember it all kind of came unraveled in Columbia last year. They were sitting in the top 10 and undefeated in the SEC, and then lost to Carolina, lost to Auburn, lost to Texas, and finished up with a loss in the bowl, 8-5. It was a dramatic drop. My theory on them last year, though, was they overperformed. I thought, with Reed and getting that squared away, and not that they weren't good, not that they should have lost to Auburn or gotten beat by 24 at Carolina or only scored 7 points against Texas at home in the renewal of that rivalry. But it was Elko's first year. Your first year, whatever happens, happens. But your second year, you take a big step, and they have. Uh, they will make mistakes sometimes. I mean, they're not, an impenetrable force. But there hadn't been a lot of close games. I will say this on SEC Sunday night, they were talking about A&M and debating whether they were number one or not over Ohio State and Indiana. And I think being from the SEC, we're always going to sit there and go, yeah, they should be number one. They're the SEC team. But look, man, I'm going to go down the SEC standings and tell you like the teams they have avoided this year. And I'm not, this is not a situation where their schedule was like preloaded as easy. It's just that some teams that were expected to be good, the Gamecocks included, are not. And you compare it to Texas's schedule, Texas is still easier, in my opinion. But they got the win against Notre Dame on the road in South Bend. Anytime you can win there, it's good. Notre Dame's in the top 10. That's up for debate, but won that one early. They've gone on the road, beating LA. I mean, when you've won in Baton Rouge and South Bend in a single year, that's a special season. That's a special season. But A&M, if they played Alabama, they're tied for first with the Aggies. No. They have not played Georgia. They have not played Ole Miss. They do play Texas later this year. They did not play Vanderbilt. They did not play Oklahoma. They did not play Tennessee. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7 teams below them, they have yet to play. And the only one on the schedule is Texas. So they played at Missouri and won, at LSU and won. They played Florida at home and won. They did not play Kentucky. They did have Mississippi State and won. They did have Auburn and won. And Arkansas, who's winless in the league and with no hope in sight. You know, maybe they could, if Missouri continues to struggle on offense, maybe that red line rivalry at the end, Hogs can get a win. Heck, they could beat Texas. You know, Texas sometimes, you know, but and then they got South Carolina. So they did factually end up playing the bottom teams in the SEC, and they also, you know, got LSU at a breaking point, and then Missouri after their quarterback was injured. You know, so hey, Carolina's just as good as any of the last few teams. You know, the teams on the SEC schedule that A&M's played so far. They've beaten them badly, you know, most of them. Arkansas ended up being a 3-point game, but A&M kind of scored at will against that defense. You know, LSU was close for a half. And that's the other thing, too, about this game. A&M is very good in the second half, which is another good coaching. You know, teams that are good in the second half are well coached. So it's going to be a challenge. But the Gamecock defense, since we haven't talked about it all week, they've got to play their best road game of the year. In other words, they got to go into their house and play kind of like they do at home to have any chance to win. Because, you know, even if you have an improved day on offense, a shootout obviously favors Texas A&M. You know, that's just Carolina's not accustomed to that. You know, so we'll see sort of what happens. But yeah, you know, Carolina defense, if they just kind of play like they did against Ole Miss and play well, and you can get some points on the board offensively, have a better plan, not hurt yourself, not turn it over on special teams, you could be in this game. Carolina's been in it with just about everybody else, you know, Vanderbilt and Oklahoma notwithstanding. All right, so don't forget the morning show later, the show with myself and Mad Dog, Smorgasbord Day today. Sports Talk tonight from 6 to 8 on the Chief Sports app. And then tomorrow, 4-quarter Friday, second round of the high school playoffs are upon us. Please go follow at 4-quarter Friday on Instagram. Also like their YouTube channel. They have a YouTube channel now under construction a little bit, but go ahead and mash that subscribe button. And we'll see you later on the show. JC Shurburtt's coffee's over.
JC and Mad Dog.